So, and if that's done once a week and the 150 to 180 minutes or so of zone 2 cardio is done, in the rest of the week, person's doing their strength and hypertrophy training, we would hope. What other sorts of endurance practices could one incorporate? You mentioned muscular endurance, like the ability, like a wall sit or the ability to do a plank. Is that something, is that useful for anything?
Yes.
Except to be doing planks and wall sitting?
No, it's extraordinarily useful. Let's hold on muscular endurance. I want to finish one more thing on this side. So if we're building this week of endurance, once a week, hit that number. If you can do repeated bouts, we talked 4 to 8, that's fantastic. If you can't if you can't manage the mental energy every week, do it every other week. It's still very good, right? Because I get it. Like, I'm a working person too, and sometimes you're just like, I cannot. Like, those workouts feel incredible afterwards, but man, they are daunting. If you love this stuff, you could do it 4 times a week. If you hate it though, it's not realistic to think you're going to be able to knock this out. You're going to end up doing 70, 80%, which is not going to get you the benefits. So just don't do it.
You really have to hit that ceiling.
You got to get up there, close.
Have someone chase. I always say, when doing this kind of work, in my mind, I'm thinking that I'm basically being chased by somebody with a syringe full of poison.
Yep.
And while there are other ways out of the situation, and for the benefit of what we're talking about, the one I'm referring to is to just run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My motivation is typically, if you just get this done, we're done in a couple of minutes. Just get it done. Like, don't go here if you're not going to do it. But when you show up, check in, and it's over really quickly.
Breathing down regulation afterwards?
100%. You have to, right? It's a huge key. So if you absolutely can't do it every other week. That's twice a month. Give me twice a month. It can be done on the road. It can be done in 20 minutes. Like, do a really good, thorough warm-up. Don't just jump into those, by the way, right away. It's not going to be as beneficial. Really nice, good sweat broke, a really good warm-up, and then give me 4 minutes of hard work and we're done, right? Get out of there. If you want to use like a bath or hot thermal stress to kind of like aid in that warm-up process, fine. Get in the sauna, get in a hot bath, get really hot, get up there, warm up, knock it out. The whole thing is 20 minutes plus 5 minutes breathing. You're out of there.
I'm going to start doing this.
It's so better. You got a bike right there.
Yeah, I've got all sorts. Every room in this studio has a different piece of equipment, it seems.
So I want that once a week, realistically every other week if I have to. I want that physical activity piece, call it whatever you want, long duration thing. Ideally, you'll do as much of that through your nose only. You're not going to be able to do the interval stuff at nose only. Don't even try. But if you can go that whole 30-minute time or 20 or 40 minutes, whatever it's going to be, that's actually a good way to regulate intensity. So go as hard as you can while still being able to breathe through your nose only. If you have to open up your mouth a little bit, fine, but try to stay there. What you'll see is very quickly, you'll be able to increase your work output while just breathing through your nose, which has a bunch of other benefits. The other piece I want is this middle ground, which is, can you sustain hard work for 8 to 12, maybe as little as 4 minutes? I'll give you 4 to 12 minutes. This doesn't have to be quite as high as the first one. You don't have to get to a heart rate max, but can you get somewhere in the 80% range? And can you hold that for 4 minutes? Maybe give me 2 minutes, 2 minutes of rest, and do that twice. Something like that. Ideal situation is what a runner would do is like what we'll call mile repeats, because they're running 4 or 5 minute miles. At whatever time it takes them to finish, they're going to rest that. So it's a 1-to-1 work to rest ratio. So a 5 minute mile, rest 5 minutes and go again. That's probably pretty unrealistic for a lot of folks.
Well, the 5 minute part is unrealistic for most folks.
Yeah.
For me, it would be 8 minutes, 8 minutes.
Fine.
Probably something like that.
Well, in your particular case, just do the 800 meter. So do 800 meters. Do something that takes 2 to 6 minutes of work. It is a lower intensity than the max stuff, but is a much higher workload. That is probably going to give you might even argue, the most cardiovascular benefit because it is sustained work output. And that's very critical. The downside of kind of like that conversational pace, it's physical activity, it's movement, it's blood flow, it's lymphatic drainage. It's not very cardiovascularly challenging though. You're just not going to get an optimal health from just walking actively.
So 2 to 6 minutes of
hard
work with then an equivalent amount of rest in between, and then repeat how many times?
Once if you have to. If it needs to be 1 rep, if it needs to be a 6 minute thing and then down regulate breathe. Twice if you can do that, 6 times, 8 times, like whatever you can really do. And you can just take that as long of a training session as you want or short. exercise choice could be whatever you want. So again, you can do sled pushes, or it could be a kettlebell circuit, or any combination of things where you're working and you're not giving yourself a break. You have got to be able to hold on at a very high waste product production level, as well as a high demand for energy. And then bring it down.
And breathing during this 2 to 6 minutes of hard output is mainly through the nose, or combination nose and mouth, or is that getting too technical?
Well, it's probably like I like it, but you tell me if it's too technical. You're going to try to maintain nasal only as much as you can, but you're going to lose it at some point. You can go through their Brian and Rob's gear system and learn more, and then you can kind of see what gear to be in. If you have to go nose in, mouth out, or something like that. But I don't really care too much, honestly, in that range. I'm getting most of my nasal only stuff at night and training and everything. So if you have to open up the throttle there to get the work done, that's okay. Oh, then we'll actually go to answer your question, which was muscular endurance. Let's go back to that piece. Muscular endurance is incredibly important for general maintenance of joint health. In other words, you have got form follows function, right? It's a very classic sciencey physiology saying, meaning you've got a couple of different, there's a bunch, but to make it easy, 2 different types of muscle fibers, fast twitch and slow twitch. Fast twitch fibers tend to be, but they're not always bigger. They contract with a higher velocity. That's why they are called fast twitch. But they tend to be more glycolytic and thus fatigable. Slow twitch tend to be smaller, though not always. They are more packed with mitochondria. They're generally better at burning fat as fuel, but contract with lower velocity. Well, we have these 2 types so that we can regulate function more. You have some muscle groups that we're going to, let me go back up a quick second. Each individual muscle in a human body has a combination of some amount of fast and some amount of slow. That percentage of fast versus slow differs from muscle to muscle. So it also differs from person to person. Easy example is your calf muscle. There's 3, but there's 2 primary muscles in your calf. One's called the soleus, one's the gastroc. The gastroc is the one where if you take your toe and point it towards your face and then flex, that's the one that pops out, on the medial side, the inside. The soleus is what we call an anti-gravity muscle, and it is generally about 80% to even 90% slow twitch. And that's because it's supposed to be contracted lightly all time, though. It's supposed to be on permanently. It's meant to keep, we call it anti-gravity because it's meant to keep you erect, up and moving. Your spinal erectors are supposed to do this. Various muscles for postural are generally slow twitch muscles. So we're supposed to be on all times, not produce fast, not produce force, but don't get tired. The gastroc is the opposite. It's not activated very often, but when it's activated, it's meant for extreme propulsion. So this gives us the ability to reach up and scratch our eyeball and also punch somebody, right? We have to be able to regulate force output, which is going back to Henneman, right? Controlling what we use and what we don't use while also not wasting energy, which is the downside of activating a big threshold motor neuron is it requires a ton of energy. It's a more efficient mode of energy, but the total amount is really, really high. So muscular endurance is going to help those slow twitch muscle fibers and slow twitch predominant muscles maintain their working job. So if you lose your muscular endurance ability in your spinal erectors or your calf, you're going to start slumping into bad positions. You're going to be putting joints in a movement pattern that they're not going to be the most happy with. So it's more than being able to just maintain a 2-minute wall squat. It's about maintaining joint integrity and allowing that musculature to not fatigue when you ask it to do heavy and fast. So what I mean by that is you've got a whole combination of muscles in your shoulder. And we'll generally call these like the rotator cuff muscles. Well, let's imagine those slow twitch, postural muscles get fatigued and they start to lose contractile tension. And then you go to do something heavy or fast or an emergency situation. Those are already pre-fatigued. You're going to rely more upon the fast twitch muscle fibers, which are there less for postural integrity. You're likely to get out of position. And this is a whole recipe of like, God, why is my shoulder just hurting? God, my back. That's very often a case of the slow twitch fibers and the slow twitch muscle groups losing muscular endurance. So you need to build that back up so that they can control and hold the joint in the position so the fast twitch fibers can then contract with force.
I'm hoping that what I'm going to say next meets what you said accurately. My experience is that getting injured lifting weights or even doing housework or yard work almost always happens when I'm not paying attention, fatigued, that's kind of obvious, but also getting in position to initiate a movement, setting down a weight or lifting weights off the rack or picking up dumbbells. That's almost always when I seem to activate this lower back thing that happens every 6 or 8 months. And what you're saying, if I understand correctly, is that this muscular endurance from wall sits or planks or things of that sort, maybe you could give us a few other examples of these, can help us because they actually prepare the system to do what we normally think of as the more intense work. So it sounds like it's really the architecture of the body that includes nerves and muscles and everything else, of course, that lets the limbs and other kind of action end of the body do its best work. Is that
let it express its own power and force. Yep.